Imagine living in a world where intelligence does not matter, where facts mean nothing, where stupidity, not evil, is the real danger. Sound familiar? It should. We are already living in it. Dietrich Bonhoeffer saw it coming. He believed stupidity was more dangerous than malice, because you cannot argue with it. You ever try debating someone who is absolutely convinced they are right, but has no idea what they are talking about? Yeah, good luck with that. Hannah Arendt studied how ordinary, nice people, just following orders, became instruments of horror. Bertrand Russell warned that society rewards ignorance while crushing those who actually think for themselves. And here we are, surrounded by people who believe headlines without reading the article, who repeat slogans without knowing what they mean, and who treat questioning anything as some kind of personal attack. Why do smart people fall for propaganda? Why does power make people blind? Why do the dumbest ideas spread the fastest? Today we are breaking down the terrifying truth about stupidity and why it has shaped history more than intelligence ever has. Let's begin. Bonhoeffer's view on stupidity. Stupidity is not a lack of intelligence, it is a refusal to think. Dietrich Bonhoeffer saw this firsthand in Nazi Germany, where ordinary people, many of them educated and capable, became blind followers of a murderous ideology. They were not driven by deep malice, but by something even more dangerous. They stopped questioning. They stopped thinking. They became instruments of a system that used their obedience to commit atrocities. Bonhoeffer believed stupidity was not just an individual failing, but a social force. It thrives in environments where people surrender their critical thinking to authority, ideology, or the comfort of conformity. When people stop asking questions, they become incapable of recognizing manipulation. They do not see reality as it is, but as it is presented to them. They mistake obedience for virtue and ignorance for strength. Unlike evil, which can be confronted and resisted, stupidity is immune to reason. The stupid person is not merely uninformed. They reject information that challenges their beliefs. They feel no need to examine their views because they are convinced they already know the truth. Attempts to reason with them are met with defensiveness, hostility, or empty slogans designed to shut down discussion. This is why stupidity is more dangerous than evil. Evil depends on stupidity to survive. The greatest crimes in history were not carried out by monsters, but by people who refused to think. They did not see the suffering they caused because they were too busy following orders, repeating propaganda, and trusting the wrong people. Bonhoeffer's warning was clear. Stupidity is not defeated by education alone. It is defeated by awakening the mind, by forcing people to confront reality, and by breaking the cycle of blind obedience. The question is whether society has the courage to do it. The social contagion of stupidity. Stupidity is not just an individual flaw. It spreads like a virus. It moves through crowds, organizations, and entire societies, turning otherwise rational people into thoughtless followers. Bonhoeffer saw this in Nazi Germany, but it is not confined to any one time or place. It happens wherever people surrender their ability to think critically in exchange for belonging, certainty, or the illusion of safety. Ideas, even false ones, gain power when repeated, often enough. The more people accept them, the harder they are to question. This is how propaganda works. A lie, if echoed by enough voices, stops feeling like a lie. It becomes truth, not because it is true, but because it is familiar. People absorb it without realizing it. They repeat it without thinking. Soon they defend it without understanding it. Social pressure plays a key role. Most people do not want to stand alone. They fear rejection more than they fear being wrong. When an entire group embraces an idea, it takes extraordinary effort to resist. History is full of examples where dangerous ideologies spread, not because people believed in them deeply, but because they were afraid to oppose them. Silence became compliance. Compliance became support. This is why stupidity flourishes in mass movements. It does not need to justify itself. It only needs to punish those who question it. The result is a society where critical thinking is seen as rebellion and blind obedience is mistaken for loyalty. The only defense against this is the courage to think, to question what is accepted, to resist the pull of conformity. Those who do not choose independent thought will be led by those who exploit their unwillingness to use it. Power and stupidity. Why leaders become blind. Power does not just corrupt, it makes people stupid. Bonhoeffer saw that the more authority someone holds, the less they are questioned. The less they are questioned, the less they question themselves. Over time, they stop thinking critically. They surround themselves with people who tell them what they want to hear. They mistake their power for wisdom. History is filled with rulers, politicians, and business leaders who started sharp and strategic, but became blind to reality the moment they gained unchecked authority. Their decisions became reckless, their arrogance grew, and their ability to recognize their own mistakes disappeared. This is not a failure of intelligence. It is the natural consequence of living in an environment where no one dares to challenge them. The structures of power reinforce this stupidity. Those in charge do not want truth. They want obedience. They reward those who agree with them and remove those who do not. Over time, an entire system forms around them, built not on intelligence but on the illusion of intelligence. Leaders mistake their control for competence. They assume their success is proof they are right, rather than proof that no one is allowed to say otherwise. This is why absolute power always leads to failure. Stupid leaders are not born. They are created by a system that protects them from reality. The moment they lose touch with it, they become dangerous. Not because they are evil, but because they genuinely do not see the harm they are causing. Bonhoeffer's insight reveals a harsh truth. The more power someone has, the more they must fight against their own stupidity. The few who succeed are those who actively seek out criticism, challenge their own ideas, and surround themselves with people who are unafraid to speak the truth. The rest fall into the same trap, blind, overconfident, and leading others into disaster. Hannah Arendt and the Banality of Evil. How stupidity enables atrocities. Evil is not always loud, aggressive, or monstrous. Sometimes it is quiet, bureaucratic, and disturbingly ordinary. Hannah Arendt, one of the most influential political thinkers of the 20th century, witnessed this firsthand when she covered the trial of Adolf Eichmann, a Nazi officer responsible for organizing the Holocaust. What shocked her was not that Eichmann was a fanatical monster. He was not. He was a dull, thoughtless bureaucrat. He did not seem to hate his victims. He simply followed orders. Arendt called this the banality of evil, the idea that history's greatest atrocities are often carried out, not by sadistic villains, but by ordinary people who refuse to think critically about their actions. They do what they are told. They conform. They obey. They never stop to question the consequences of their obedience. This connects directly to Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity. Eichmann was not uniquely evil. He was an example of what happens when people surrender their moral responsibility to authority. He did not make decisions. He followed protocol. He did not see people. He saw numbers. His defense was chilling in its simplicity. He was just doing his job. Arendt's insight is terrifying because it reveals how easily evil spreads in a society that discourages independent thought. The most horrific crimes in history were not committed by psychopaths alone, but by thousands of people like Eichmann, people who did not stop to think. This is not just history. It is a warning. When people abandon critical thinking, when they choose blind obedience over moral responsibility, they create the conditions for evil to thrive. The lesson from Bonhoeffer and Arendt is clear. The greatest threat to humanity is not just those who do harm, but those who stand by unthinking as harm is done. Bertrand Russell and the triumph of foolishness. If stupidity is so dangerous, why does it thrive? Why do foolish ideas spread faster than intelligent ones? Why does society reward ignorance while punishing critical thought? Bertrand Russell, one of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century, had an answer. He saw that stupidity does not just exist. It is cultivated. It is encouraged. It is rewarded. Russell argued that modern society is designed to favor simple, emotionally charged ideas over complex, rational ones. Politicians, media, and institutions do not want an informed population that questions everything. They want followers. They want people who react, not people who think. That is why shallow slogans and simplistic narratives dominate public discourse. It is why people believe what makes them feel good rather than what is true. Stupidity thrives because it is easier. Thinking is hard. It requires effort, humility, and the willingness to be wrong. Most people would rather cling to comforting illusions than struggle with inconvenient truths. The result is a society where the loudest, most confident voices win, whether they are right or not. Russell warned that this tendency leads to a dangerous cycle. The ignorant gain influence, surround themselves with equally ignorant followers, and push out those who challenge them. Over time, stupidity becomes institutionalized. It becomes the norm. Intelligence, reason, and complexity are dismissed as elitist or unnecessary. This is how civilizations collapse, not in an instant but gradually, as truth is replaced with spectacle and empty rhetoric. Russell's message is clear. Stupidity is not just an accident, it is a tool of power. And unless people actively resist it, they will always be controlled by those who use it against them. The social contagion of stupidity. Why it spreads like a virus. Stupidity is not just an individual failure, it spreads through society like a virus, infecting people who might otherwise be capable of thinking for themselves. Bonhoeffer saw how entire populations could be swept up in irrational beliefs, not because they were forced, but because they willingly surrendered their ability to think critically. The way stupidity spreads is simple. People do not want to be outsiders, they want to fit in. When an idea, no matter how absurd, becomes widely accepted, questioning it becomes dangerous. Most people will conform, not because they believe it, but because resisting takes too much effort. They repeat slogans, follow trends, and accept half-truths without ever examining them. Over time, what starts as social pressure turns into personal conviction. This is how propaganda works. A falsehood, repeated enough times, becomes indistinguishable from truth. People absorb ideas passively, through repetition, peer influence, and authority figures who reinforce the message. They do not investigate, they do not challenge. They simply go along with the crowd. Social media has accelerated this process. Algorithms do not reward truth, they reward engagement. Sensationalism, outrage, and tribal thinking spread faster than careful analysis or intellectual humility. People are not exposed to different perspectives. They are trapped in echo chambers where their existing beliefs are constantly reinforced, making them even more resistant to questioning. This is why stupidity is so powerful. It does not need to win arguments. It just needs to make questioning too exhausting, too isolating, or too risky. Those who think critically are drowned out, labeled as troublemakers, or ignored entirely. The cycle continues, and stupidity becomes self-sustaining. The only way to break free is to resist conformity, to question what everyone else accepts, to challenge ideas, even when it is uncomfortable. The moment people stop thinking for themselves, they become tools for those who do. And history shows that those in power rarely have their best interests at heart. Breaking free. How to resist stupidity. Escaping the grip of stupidity is not just about intelligence, it is about mindset. Bonhoeffer understood that stupidity thrives when people abandon critical thinking in favor of comfort, conformity, and obedience. The question is, how do we break free? The first step is recognizing that stupidity is not just a lack of knowledge, it is a refusal to think. People fall into it because it is easier to follow than to question. Thinking critically requires effort, self-awareness, and the courage to be wrong. Most people would rather hold on to familiar beliefs than confront uncomfortable truths. Breaking free starts with resisting that impulse. Independent thinking means questioning authority, media, and even your own biases. It means refusing to accept ideas just because they are popular. It means learning how to recognize manipulation, whether it comes from governments, corporations, or social movements. The moment you stop questioning is the moment you hand over control of your mind to someone else. Bonhoeffer warned that stupidity is not defeated by debate. Logical arguments do not work on people who refuse to engage with reality. The only way to weaken stupidity is to create a culture that values critical thinking, intellectual humility, and moral responsibility. This starts with individuals who are willing to stand apart, to challenge ideas even when it is unpopular, and to push back against the tide of blind conformity. Breaking free is not easy. It is lonely. It is exhausting. But it is necessary. Stupidity does not just shape individuals. It shapes history, and the world is always at the mercy of those who refuse to think unless others choose to resist. Stupidity is not just ignorance. It is a force that shapes history, fuels oppression, and spreads faster than truth ever could. Bonhoeffer saw it as more dangerous than evil because you cannot argue with it. Arendt showed how it turns ordinary people into instruments of destruction. Russell warned that society rewards it while crushing those who dare to think. But stupidity does not win on its own. It thrives because people let it. They stop questioning. They go along with the crowd. They trade thinking for comfort. The only way to fight back is to think for yourself. Question what you are told. Challenge what seems obvious. Stay uncomfortable, because the moment you stop thinking, someone else starts thinking for you. So, what do you think? Have you ever challenged an idea that everyone around you accepted? How did it go? Let me know in the comments. If this video made you think, hit like, subscribe, and keep questioning everything.